As I took the 2-mile walk down Walnut Street tonight, a walk taken many times this past year, familiar bars and restaurants were not appealing. I had a higher purpose. I felt lighter, almost floating. My heavy pack was not weighing me down. Thoughts of forest fires, bears, snakes, starvation, they all danced through my mind. A swig of bourbon tells me everything will be okay. Fear is okay. This is why I travel, to take myself outside of my comfort zone, to explore new places, and to grow as a person. It has been a great year in Philadelphia. I'm thankful for family and friends, new connections and old ties, but the time has come to discover something new, whatever that may be. June 26, 2012. That was a journal entry from about 3 years ago. I think about that night every time I travel back to Philadelphia, and this trip home is no different. I remember sitting outside a 30th Street station. It was around midnight, and I was waiting for my good friends Mike and Chris. We were catching a train to follow a dream of hiking around the mountains for a summer, carrying only what we could fit into our packs. No agendas, no commitments, just a one-way ticket to Denver. We were creating a new path for ourselves, a path we had no idea where it would lead us.
I guess the trip started actually way before we actually started walking. Ryan and I were in a bar in Vermont and doing what we do best at that time was drink beer and go on adventures, and we kind of decided that we were going to go to Colorado. My roommate and friend Chris at the time, and Ryan's friend obviously, decided that we were going to meet at the river along the Schuylkill River in Philadelphia, middle of the night. I think it was midnight on a certain date. So put our packs on our back and kind of walked through the night and met Ryan along the banks of the Schuylkill River, which is basically right at the base of 30th Street Station. But so we met and drank a bunch of beers and got on the train, and we kind of woke up, and we weren't surprised we were in Washington, D.C. because we knew we were going there, but it was definitely a cathartic wake up, and so that was like the first step of the journey. But getting to Chicago was the second leg of the journey, and kind of saw the city for much as Chicago you could see in about an hour and a half. And I remember being super stoked just to get to Denver and to see the mountains, and because my experience driving through Colorado a few years before, I just remember the distinct the views of the Continental Divide and how beautiful it was. And Kerouac talks about that too, getting to Denver and seeing the mountains, and we didn't get to see them because of the wildfires. But it was, I don't know, it didn't really hit me in the city quite like it would, a couple days later in Rocky Mountain National Park. And it was good. It was a lot of just long days in the mountains, and drinking from streams and eating what you had in your pack, and just living off of those rations. It was a very, I guess, primal, more primitive way to travel and explore. I got to see so many things I'd never seen before, like 14ers and herds of elk and a moose. So there was a lot of on-the-spot planning, in which kind of carried us through the rest of the trip, and I think that all kind of started, on the first real day in Rocky Mountain National Park.
Getting out of Rocky Mountain National Park, we stayed at Grand Lake, and there's nothing like getting back into society after being in the woods for 7 days. And it makes you appreciate those things that you take for granted that you have every day in life. After Grand Lake, we jumped on the CDT. CDT is a really interesting hiking trail because there's not much information on it, and the cairns were few and far between. Everything was just so vast. You go above tree line and you're so exposed, and you can just really see the mountains rose out of the ground. We had some pretty scary situations when we were on the trail. We really didn't know what to expect, with Colorado weather, with weather on the divide in general. We bushwhacked through 2 miles of wind-blown pine kill beetle forest, and I mean we were going over mounds of logs that were 10 feet high. And I remember getting out finally to this lake. We saw this thunderstorm coming across. We just took our packs off and sat on the packs and watched the lightning shoot across the lake and over our heads. And that was one of the scariest moments of my life. When we were on the trail, we were trying to find our way. We kind of got off the beaten path, and I made a wrong move, and all 60 pounds of my backpack came crashing down to my ankle and messed me up pretty bad. We ended up hitchhiking to Summit County, where we spent a week, and I kind of nursed my ankle back to health. And after Summit County, we got back onto the CDT, and once again I came down to my ankle, and it wasn't 100%, and twisted it again. And I think at that point I kind of knew I couldn't go on. So that's when I called my trip, and I was really lucky to have 2 good friends that decided to stick with me, and we kind of reassessed our situation.
So after about a month of being out on the trail, we were all pretty beat up, and Brian had hurt his ankle pretty bad. So we found ourselves in Leadville, Colorado, and we were staying at a hostel, and I think it was Mike threw out this idea of like, why don't we hop in a car and just do a road trip? That was just such a great idea because we had seen a lot of what Colorado had to offer, but we still had half of the country that we haven't seen yet. So we grabbed a map like we've done so many times before. Actually, Mike called his girlfriend and she came out with us, and we kind of drew out a route. And we rented a car from Denver, and we just drove straight from Denver to Utah, and it took quite a long time. I remember distinctly we made camp in the dark, and then I woke up and we were in Arches, and it was like waking up on Mars or something. It was just such a bizarre landscape. All the redstone and all these weird rock formations. It was really cool. Probably the coolest place I've ever been. So then from there we went to San Francisco, and something really cool happened when we were in San Francisco. We met up with Ryan's friends, Tim and Dan, and it was a good thing we did because Tim knew all the best places to stop along the West Coast. So we traveled along with them and found places that we would have never found on our own, like Sand Dunes National Park. And then up the West Coast, we went to a place called Crater Lake, which was actually a volcano that the top had blown off, and there was like a lake inside. So we did this evening hike, like right before sunset, and it was just so picturesque. It was insane. That was a very memorable moment. And then from there, we went to Glacier National Park. So Glacier National Park actually has one of the last glaciers in existence in our country. It was actually different camping there because all of a sudden we're in grizzly country, and we actually had the thrill of seeing a few grizzlies, probably like 5 over the course of being there. So then after we left Glacier, how could we not stop at Yellowstone? So we went to Yellowstone, and I mean, it didn't disappoint. It was just a beautiful park. And then after Yellowstone, we went to Tetons. And Mike specifically actually had this dream of always running up Grand Teton. And Mike completed one of his dreams, kind of checked that off the bucket list. Yeah, and then so Tetons was the final stop on our trip, so we decided to head back to Denver, return the rental car, and we made a group decision that we thought Summit County was a place that we wanted to kind of settle down and spend some time. We kind of all went back home, flew home, and collected all of our stuff we wanted to bring out here, and just prepared to make a life out here for an undetermined period of time.
The first year living out in Colorado.
Yep.
What I remember most about it is just the especially that first month when we got out here, is just finding work. You know, as a way to kind of sustain us living in the mountains.
Yeah, it didn't really matter what it was just as long as it was something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Something to pay the bills, especially, you know.
I think at that point we had built up the confidence to just kind of jump into the unknown and trust ourselves that we'd find something and make it work.
Well, I think what drew me here, and drew maybe all of us here, is like that, I guess like a quest to do something different or to learn something new, or I think there's something, you know, very fulfilling about, you know, taking a leap into just a situation you're not super familiar with.
My first exposure with mountains was with you guys going to Vermont a few times before we came out here. And before that, I had never experienced anything so massive. And I think the mountains really offered a challenge that I liked. You know, like once you start off to summit a mountain, you have to complete it. And I think I apply that to everyday life, even if they don't amount to much on paper.
For me, there's just so much to do. You know, as much as I love snowboarding, summer is my favorite time of the year because there's running and hiking and camping. And just Colorado is probably the coolest place in the United States. There's just always somewhere new to go.
Like every time I go on the mountain, see something new. You know, it was like this just total, like, just I was fascinated, mesmerized by, like, you know, what can be done in the mountains, like, you know, running or hiking or whatever it is, whatever you choose to do. Whereas now it's like this appreciation. It's like this lifestyle that's created around it. It's no longer just like being mesmerized by them or this fascination. It's like, this is what I do. Like this is who I am. This is what I want to do. This is how I want to do it. I want to run in the mountains. I want to explore in the mountains. So it's just become now like a lifestyle as opposed to like a dream.
I just kind of feel like that's what mountain life is all about.
Yeah, I think having a common appreciation for nature that everybody seems to have out here really brought it together, whether it just be like getting a group together to go hike up a 14er or go for a group run, and then maybe like grab some beers afterwards. You can always find friends, it seems.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade it for anything. And definitely, you know, there's strength in numbers and there's strength in that like-minded, shared interest, and I think that's really special.
Absolutely. You know, and I think that's something that I'll carry with me. You know, from these 3 years of being out here,